Good evening, and welcome to another episode of The Fire Caves, a Star Trek Deep Space Nine podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Perry.
I'm your host, David. Tonight we're talking about Season 7, Episode 17, Penumbra. But before we continue, you can find us on Facebook, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube as The Fire Caves, a Star Trek Deep Space Nine podcast.
That is correct. And as I say every single week, you should find us and follow us because we are great. We are awesome. We're a good time. And we're coming to the end of our show. And I'd hate for you to miss out on the exciting conclusion that actually, unfortunately, begins tonight. We start the final chapter of this great 7 season long journey that we've been on. So, um, hopefully you enjoy it. You've enjoyed what we've done so far, and hopefully you enjoy our take on the end here. And also want to stick around to see what we do next after this. But yes, tonight we kick it all off. So before we get into all that, of course, we always like to give ourselves a little bit of a check in here. So, David, how has your week been?
Week's been good. Like I said, the last couple of weeks have been busy at work with our closing. And I don't know if I said it last week to you, but I'm gonna say it now. I know I said it to some other people, but I'll say it now. This closing of the company, the stores, it's so interesting. Uh, it feels like we're a wounded animal, and there are a bunch of scavengers just flying around and coming around to look at what's is it dead yet. It's kind of icky right now. The kind of people that are coming in, a lot of people coming in, which is great, making money, which is what I want. But it's weird, this sensation of like you constantly look up to see who's coming in the door, and it's people who are like, "Oh, you're going out of business? Oh." Like, yeah, huh? How can I help you? Oh, well, what deals you got going on right now? Like, okay,
Smell the
weird.
blood in the water.
Yeah, it's sharks, man. Um, but anyway, that's been good. Been making more money because more people coming in. Finished reading The Americans in Normandy yesterday, which was that book about, of course, the Americans in Normandy during World War II. Much more focused description of the battles of those first few months after D-Day, and just how brutal it was, just how rough those the fighting was amongst all the hedgerows and everything else. They basically were forced to do head-on attacks on everything. But then later on, when they finally had the breakout, they were able to finally start flanking around the Germans. And the last part of the book was about the Falaise Pocket, which is the Germans had, because Hitler always thought that the German army needed to make one big move, one big attack, and they would push the Americans and everyone else back. And so the Germans had tried making an aggressive attack, sent a bunch of their men west, and the Americans are already in kind of southern parts of, not southern France just yet, but they're able to flank to the east. And when the Germans realize that they're kind of cut off, they try and escape back toward Germany. And there's a kerfuffle about who's responsible about cutting off the Germans, and that doesn't quite work out. So a lot of Germans are able to get back to Germany, which was an interesting. It was interesting to hear that part of the war described in a little more detail. Basically, the author is very critical of General Bradley, who was in charge of a lot of that stuff. He thinks Bradley was outmatched for what his role required of him as the guy right underneath Eisenhower for the Americans. But needless to say, interesting book. Went and saw F1, the new movie with Brad Pitt. I actually saw it Monday night by myself just for fun, just wanted to kill some time. And I actually really enjoyed it for just a casual film, just to go watch something and have a good time. And my parents, who are actually into F1 a bit, they were kind of concerned the movie wasn't going to do a good job of actually showcasing F1 properly. So I was like, well, hey, I enjoyed the movie more than I expected. So, hey, I'll go see it again with you instead of doing, fireworks, because in the area we've had a lot of rain lately in Texas. For those who might have heard, we've had actually a
Yeah,
lot of number of emergencies in certain
yeah,
parts of
a lot of
Texas.
bad things coming
Yeah,
off that too.
but I went with my folks. We saw F1. They liked it. I think they were still kind of bummed out that some of the things are a little not correct. Like Brad Pitt being 60, that's not a realistic age for someone in F1. But in the story,
Well,
yeah,
if Tom Cruise can still fly a fighter jet in
Mav-
Top Gun,
yeah, Top Gun
then
Maverick,
then Brad Pitt can
F1.
drive a car.
Yeah, exactly.
So
Same director, both those films, by the way.
there you go. That's
Yeah.
what it is. Got to show everyone that these over 60s can still do it. Still got it.
That was actually something I was watching someone reviewing it, and she was talking about how that's kind of an interesting twist on things. It's like the actors from 30, 40 years ago, they were playing the young rookie hotshots, but now they don't want to give up the limelight. So instead of a new character coming in playing the rookie, the limelight's still on the now older actor, as the Tom Cruise type, so he can play the
You know,
the mentor character this time around.
that's an interesting thing because there was kind of um a tradition, I could say, of this passing the torch, older actors starring with younger actors in pivotal movies, which kind of gave them their breakout roles. Robert Redford did this. What was his name? Newman. I'm trying to think of what his name is. The
Paul
guy
Newman.
with Paul Newman.
Yeah,
Paul Newman did it. In fact, he did it for Tom Cruise, as a matter of
yeah.
fact.
The pool movie.
Um,
What was it? Um, Hot Shot? No,
yeah, no,
I forget the name of the movie.
yeah,
But yes, there's the movie where he teaches, yeah,
right.
Tom Cruise how to be a better pool shark. But anyway, yeah,
Yeah, I mean, like, and I'm just saying that there was always a history of that with these guys. Marlon Brando doing it for pretty much everybody who was ever in any of the Godfather movies, getting kind of this, blessing from this legendary actor. And then it's just like there's this weird disconnect that's happened. So now, like, those guys who were the young ones then aren't really doing that anymore. And I think that part of it is because we don't really make movies like that anymore. Like we would never do a movie about learning how to hustle pool now. I mean, we've got 1,001 superhero whatever movies, but doing a simple movie about pool hustling or how to, be a hotshot bartender, like Tom Cruise does, and I mean, like that's the kind of thing that just doesn't really um happen anymore. And I don't know why that is. Um, that's just an interesting departure from how movies are made these days. Like we would rather rehash the same story with the same particular actors over and over again, or we would do a superhero movie with a bunch of unknowns and run that cash cow into the ground and then retell the story again. Like
right.
that's how we have like 9,000 Batman origin story movies and Superman origin story movies. It's like, okay, we get it. He fell to the earth. He gets powers from the sun. Can we like move on? I don't need to see the drawn out process of him discovering his powers and whatever. I mean, Smallville covered that. All right. We don't need any more of a breakdown.
Right.
Please move forward in the storyline. Somebody.
Yeah.
Batman, we got it. Shot in an alley. He's traumatized and got a lot of money. Great. Like someone give me something else. And then there's a whole other series of characters that just never really seem to get their due in that same genre. Like there's for all those movies, there's still not a Martian Manhunter movie. Just like stuff like that. So I don't know. It's just weird to me the way that we just kind of like hang on to people to play the same thing, like 61-year-old Ethan Hunt in Mission Impossible 22 or whatever it is that we're on now. It's just
Yeah.
crazy.
Hmm.
So maybe we should bring that back. Like have them make movies where they're the young, or not the young, but they're like the mentor of someone who actually shows legitimate promise and is
Right.
going to go somewhere, and can potentially go somewhere. I think the closest that we even get to that is probably Tom Holland and Robert Downey Jr. because they
Yeah.
were Spider-Man and Tony Stark, respectively.
Yeah.
and he was the mentor there. But even by those standards, it's kind of a cop out because Holland had already done a few movies before he became Spider-Man,
Hmm.
you know? So,
Yeah, well, it's interesting because I think with using the Paul Newman example, I would still say I think we could still say that like Tom Cruise was like the main draw for that movie. Paul Newman gives it gravitas, but
yeah.
movies like Top Gun Maverick or even this F1 movie with Brad Pitt or Tom Cruise, it's still the older actor who's supposed to be the main draw. The younger actors are more side characters to that character as opposed to
But
the other way around.
they're supposed to, like, step up.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, in that movie with Newman, Newman was, yes, the definite draw, but Tom Cruise was also hot off of Risky Business,
Hmm.
and but he was still a relative unknown, you know, and did a great job.
Yeah.
So, and now it's just you don't really see that anymore. You see these kind of flash in the pan, youngish actors, actresses, whatever, and then they're done. They're gone. We like never really see them in anything again, unless it's to bring them back to play the same character in the fifth, 10th, 12th iteration of the same movie,
Right.
you know? So, and then again, that's only in the ones that are like the superhero movies. Like, I can't think of an original movie that's come out lately that is not in that vein.
Yeah.
So, and maybe I'm missing something. I just don't go to the movies anymore. I don't pay attention to them as much as I did. I knew about the F1 movie, but I don't have an interest in Formula racing. So it's probably not one that I will see. But there it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah. The other thing to mention is that the season 5 of Lego Masters had started, and I had caught it, so I'm catching up on Lego Masters. They're only a few weeks in; they're not too far, but I love that show because I love Legos, obviously, and just a fun little show to watch. But I spoke with you this morning. I texted you. I was like, "Am I good to start the Expanse book 9?" You gave me the go ahead. I didn't start it today. I
I
was
sure
busy at
did.
work. We had a busy day, but yeah, looking forward to finally digging in, and hopefully we can get a after dark episode out here soon. We can talk about it. Ah, it's it's
Yeah,
it's it's super. It's bittersweet to be here right at the end.
it really is. I was actually going to talk about that from for me. I just started chapter 32 this week, so and I mean, literally like just started it. I'm here with it. Got just this much left,
Oh man.
so I'm like chomping at the bit to get it all done. It's been a heck of a story. Don't get me wrong, I've missed Avasarala, and I find myself sometimes being like, what would she have said in this situation? And really kind of wishing that at some point somebody did something that would, call her back to, some way.
Right.
But of course, it doesn't happen now. I mean, I can still hold out hope in these final portions of the book that they make some kind of reference to her, especially considering how important she was to the first 5, 6 books, really.
Hmm.
But hey, you know, it's whatever.
Yeah.
Been reading the um, Star Trek comics in which it talks about Captain Cisco as well. So going into a lot of that, and then I've also been like going around and rewatching certain shows and kind of just getting caught back up with stuff because new things are getting ready to start. Like for example, the newest season of Strange New Worlds is getting ready to drop next week, I think, the 17th. So yeah, we're coming into t- today's the 6th. So yeah, next week we should have the first episode of that. And I watched this new show, and this is what I really want to talk about. It's called Countdown. It's available on Amazon. The main star in it is Jensen Ackles, who played Dean Winchester on that show, Supernatural. And it's basically about a group of law enforcement officers from various types of law enforcement, DEA, FBI, LAPD, so forth and so on. And they all come together to form this task force that's investigating a Homeland Security officer's death. And then it kind of uncovers, like each episode builds on them uncovering something else that's kind of like we thought that it was about this one thing, which initially they start off thinking it was drugs, but then it turns out to be like nuclear terrorism and trying to figure out who's doing what and the double cross and all that. The show just started, so I was thinking that it was one of those I'd never heard about it. The first season's dropped and it got canceled and it's dropped off into obscurity somewhere or whatever. No, just started. First
Okay.
episode came out June 25th. So I'm like, yes, I'm on the ground floor of a new show. So I'm really excited about that. Episodes I've seen so far seem pretty good. Starts off kind of flat, kind of one dimensional, but it quickly builds. And the overall story that at least they've given so far, I've been liking. So I'm holding out hope that it maintains its punch. So that's pretty much been it for me on this week. So we can now switch over into what we're actually here to talk about because you guys don't care about all those other shows and books and us being nerds on other fronts. This is about uh, Deep Space Nine. So again, we're talking about the episode Penumbra. This is the 167th episode of the show. It
Wow.
is also part one or chapter one in the 10 chapter arc that will round out and end our series here. So
Got
um, I will say I do not like this episode. I appreciate it for the groundwork that it lays because there are a lot
yeah.
of important things that happen in this episode. But overall, don't like the episode, and we'll
It's
get
a
into that, of
very
course.
fractured episode. This
It
episode,
is. It almost has, we've talked about it before, A plot, B plot. This is almost A, B, C, D
yeah,
plot,
yeah. That's how
which is hard.
Wikipedia kind of almost plays it
Oh,
out.
does
Yeah.
it really? Okay.
Well,
So yeah,
not so definitively as ABCD, but it basically has like four storyline beats that it's
oh,
talking about.
okay. Well, yeah,
It describes the Worf Esri part as like the A plot, and everything else is like BCD. But I think that's
I
arguable.
wouldn't even. Yeah, I was gonna say I wouldn't call it the A plot. I mean,
Yeah.
you could kind of say that because it's A because it starts first,
No.
but
Well,
I
no.
mean,
It's Cisco talking um
Cassidy.
to Cassidy in the first scene. So that would
I
arguably be the
mean,
first A plot, but
yeah, just not a.
how
All
about
right.
you recap it in the order you prefer?
Well, whatever. So, yeah, basically this episode, like as David said, it does start with Cassidy and Ben, and they're talking, and he's excited because he's found this area that he recently visited in Bajor, and he's thinking that when all comes said and done, he's going to buy some land there, and he intends to build a house there once the war is over, and that's where he's going to retire. Then we hear what is it? Oh, we then see Esri in the Replimat with O'Brien and Bashir, where she casually lets it drop that Captain Baudet, the Galamite, who's got the transparent skull, has come aboard the station and she had dinner with him. And it's clear that she's doing this as a way to kind of like get at Julian a little bit. She wants to see his reaction, which, just again, for me, it was like eye rolls. Like, I don't care, like at all. So, they're talking and everything else. And then Kira walks up and she's like, there has been this, there was an incident with the ship that Worf was on. Most people escaped, but Worf is missing. And this kind of sends Esri through a lurch here. Um, the Defiant goes out, tries to look for him. They stay out for quite a long time. Can't find him. He's gone missing near the Badlands. They can't find him. And because of Dominion activity in the area, they decide they're going to have to give up the search for now and go back home. Esri can't take that, so she gets on a runabout and heads out on her own. When Cisco gets back from the Defiant, he is informed by Kira and company that Esri has left, which I've got a problem with that. They could have clearly sent him a message and said, "Hey, Esri took a runabout, and y'all are probably gonna, I don't know, cross paths at some point. You might want to stop her."
Yeah,
No.
there's no excuse because they are literally going down the same to the
Right.
Badlands and back.
Right.
Like, yeah, you're totally right.
So, I mean, and no one thought to, like, tell him this beforehand or whatever, and so then he gets to the ops and he calls her up and he's like, "What are you doing?" She does that fake, "Oh, we're having intermittent signaling issues" nonsense, which was awful to say the
Yeah.
least. But then Benjamin also, he just, like, lets her go, and he's like,
She would
pretty much,
resent me if I didn't let her go.
"Yeah, she's gotta do this for her, and I've gotta let her, otherwise she'd resent me if she didn't," which I guess considering their supposed friendship between Ezri, Jadzia, and Curzon, that would make sense, but the way they explain it is
Yeah.
half-assed, to say
Yeah.
the least. She gets out there, she starts doing her, like, I'm pathetic because she's getting space sick and
Which is the
whatever.
first time I've ever even heard of someone getting space sick. Which is supposed to be like seasickness, but like the rocking of the ship. Like, this is the
It
first time I've ever
makes
heard of
it
sea or
makes
ship sickness.
no sense. Why would you get space sick?
They
Anyway,
they
it
gave her all
happens.
of the cliches. They gave her the seasickness. They gave her the I can't hear you. I'm going through a tunnel.
It was awful.
Nonsense.
So, but anyway, so she gets out there, she turns off the engines and lets the waves from the energy currents of the Badlands wash her hither and thither and yon, basically to take her, hopefully, along the same path that Worf's escape pod went, which again makes no
No
sense.
sense.
There's no reason to think that that would happen. The whole point of the Badlands is that they are inherently unpredictable with their plasma wave energy.
Yeah,
There's no reason to think that the discharge from any of those plasma wells would throw her even remotely in the vicinity
yeah,
of his smaller, supposedly much
yes,
smaller craft.
right,
But whatever, it
right.
works. It happens. She does it.
Of course it
She
does.
she finds him, she beams him aboard, and he's like, "Okay, let's go home," basically. Um, she tries to clean him up a little bit, but he's not really having anything to do with her because it's Esri, of course. She eventually tries
And
to get
she's
him.
obviously giving off like romantic vibes to
Yeah,
him.
there's something else going on here, and
Yeah,
he seems to be trying to keep his distance.
right.
Then finally, like they have a little bit of an argument about it, and he's like, "I just don't want to talk about Jadzia, period." The ship gets spotted by some Jem'Hadar ships. They try to avoid them. They end up crashing on a planet in the Corrales system. And while they're on said planet, they now really have it out with their argument and talking about Jadzia and so forth, which eventually leads to her or
Jumping
them
his phone.
kissing.
Yeah,
They kiss, and then that leads to them. We're led to believe they
had a night of
have
passion.
sex
Yeah.
there by the fireside. They
I
are later
always love
disturbed.
when people go through the motions of getting redressed in their suits before going to sleep in their arms of the.
Well, so it's supposed to be that they did this because again, they're on an alien planet. They don't have blankets to keep themselves warm. So after doing the deed, you would want to put your clothes back on to give yourself maximum
Fair enough.
warmth and protection. So
Fair enough.
there's that. But then, of course, because they're just so tired from their wild passion, they don't hear these creatures sneak up on them who shoot them, and it turns out it's the Breen, and the Breen have taken them prisoner, and that's pretty much where their story ends. The other story is Cisco on the station, and he is basically they're just waiting for Worf and Esri to come back. There's really not much for him to do. So Cisco's kind of like palling around in his quarters. He starts to build a model of the house that he wants to build on the property that he's bought on Bajor. He's showing this to Cassidy, and they're having a pretty, nice, stable moment at home. And then he basically takes that as an opportunity to pop the question because he's like, I want this to not just be my house, I want this to be our house, you know, be here, live with me, so forth and so on. He pulls a little ring out of some model that he's got in there and officially proposes, to which she says yes. We then see them later on, could be in the Repromat, could be in Quarks, where they're talking about wedding planning and she wants to keep it relatively small. He's like in full agreement, but he's like, I can't help but feel like we're forgetting something. To which anybody watching would be like, yeah, you're forgetting that you're the freaking emissary. Which, of course, he gets a prompt reminder when the little girl comes up and says that she wants to be a part of the bride's wedding procession,
Brain, yeah.
and one of 51 people that get selected, and they turn around and the girl's telling them, yeah, the emissary is getting married, it's going to be the biggest wedding ever, and people are all out and about, and they're looking, and um um obviously they're elated that this is getting ready to happen. So now we have, so then Cisco, and Cassidy are kind of getting lost in that. We see Cisco ask Jake to be the best man, to which Jake agrees, and of course begins to licentiously plan the bachelor
Bachelor
party right
party.
away. Cisco then has a flash of memory or whatever, where he's visited by the prophets, in particular, the prophet named Sarah, who was his mother, who tells him that he is to walk his destiny, his path alone, that Cassidy cannot share in his journey with him. He argues and says that, he's in love, he loves her, he should be able to, live his life without their interference. But she's just like, nah, bro, we got plans for you. Shut up. And so, they kind of leave it at, not necessarily him definitively saying that he's going to do what Sarah wants, but he doesn't really dismiss her either. And so that's just kind of where that story is left. Our next story, which is probably the smallest aspect of what's going on, is that the founder is suffering from some disease, and it's her condition has gotten a bit worse. She's ordered some Vorta to be doing research on a potential cure for what's ailing them. We see that this is not going very well. She orders Wayoon to have them document their notes and then kill all those scientists, and then to activate their clones and hope that the new generation of clones will have better success at coming up with a potential cure. We see her pull off a flake of herself to give to him for a sample, and as soon as she puts it into the little jar, instead of it being the normal amber color that we're used to seeing of changelings, it's a weird kind of sickly greenish blue. And she looks all dried out and pruny and everything else. Damar has become very suspicious. They've had to lower the temperature significantly for the founder, but she's not around very much. And so Damar's just kind of like, where is she? What's going on? To which Wayoon, who seems to be a particularly ruthless Wayoon, is like, none of your concern. Don't ask questions. Do as you're told.
Right.
So then that brings us, of course, to our final story. And this is where Damar seems to be really kind of in a sense of, he's recognizing he's not important. And he's drinking a lot. He's visiting, he's got his lady friends coming around, he doesn't really seem to be operating like he's a man with any kind of purpose. So, in one particular moment where he's just kind of, being mouthy or whatever, the door opens and in walks Gul Dukat,
Mm,
looking refreshed and purpose driven and self important as he always has.
of course.
And so he asks for Damar to arrange a favor with the surgeon. Of course, Damar does so, and the surgeon turns Dukat into a Bajoran. We don't know why yet, but we know that it's important to whatever he's planning. And that's where that story pretty much ends.
Mark
It's,
Alimo in his full, unadorned Cardassian glory.
yes. So yeah, those are essentially the storylines that we have in this episode, and
This is all just to be continued, to be
a hundred
continued, to be
percent, 100.
continued.
Yeah, we the ultimate tip of the iceberg. We've played it all out here, as to what's to come next in the next 9 episodes that finish us out. So, But what did you think of this episode in watching it? I told you already I did not like this one. What about you?
Well, I do feel like because it is so much of a to be continued type of episode, it is so much of a we're setting things up. The dominoes need to fall, but we got to put them up first, kind of story. So I could give it a pass, but yeah, it definitely comes off as set up. Certainly a bit boring. Um, the real two storylines that matter are the ones on the station. But let's quickly talk about the changeling. I just have to say that they did a very poor job of making her like they gave her bits of felt on her mask and they did a terrible job of making it look like it was a part of her face at all. It's just like here's a piece of fabric that we're gonna dab some, like sticky material to and then touch it to your face. Like it looks bad. It doesn't look like the character is having trouble. It looks like the makeup department rushed a rush job, which is unfortunate. But it is an interesting plot point that they're excuse me, that they truly are breaking down. There's something wrong. I mean, she had said that it's the whole Great Link. That's not just her problem, being separate from the
Mhm.
Great Link. Um, and it's
Yes, as far
interesting,
as we know, all of the founders are suffering from this disease.
and because just a
Um,
few episodes ago we met one of the other
the
changelings that
100.
were the 100, we know that it truly is something about the Great Link. There is something about the Great Link. It's not like all changelings, Odo included. Um, so yeah, that's interesting. And oh my gosh, seeing Ducat as a Cardassian. I mean, seeing Mark Alimo, as I said, he's not all covered up in Cardassian. He's just got a Bajoran ridge. He's got an earring. It looks great. It's like a homecoming almost for the actor. It feels like the man has been playing parts on like TNG and
Mhm.
playing this character. To see the man without so much makeup on is great. Not that we haven't seen him play parts without makeup on. He played like a cowboy, I think, in one scene on TNG, right?
He
Uh,
wasn't a cowboy, he was a card
Card
shark.
Shark. Yeah. Well,
And
in the
he
Wild
was
One.
all styled up. He looked like the devil to me. I
Yeah.
always used to crack up when I watched it because I was like, he looks like one of those like vaudevillian
Oh
caricatures
yeah.
of the devil.
When
Like you just
I
need smoke to come up from behind him and just be like, because he was even wearing like the bright red velour vest, and
yeah
he had the perfect twirled mustache and the hair. I was like, he's the devil. Like this man has
yeah.
been evil his
Oh yeah.
entire
When
career.
at the store, I don't usually pick the station we're on because I don't care. But someone turned it to country a few months ago, and the song "The Devil Came Down to Georgia" about the fiddling.
Mm.
Like that's Marco Limo in that outfit is the devil come down to Georgia. It's a great song. He looked great in that part. But anyway, point is Marco Limo. He's like the final thing we see in this episode is him now as a Bajoran, ready to wreak havoc. He says he has found the love of the paw race when he meets um, what's his face? Damar. When he sees Damar, he's like, I have come to know the love of the paw race. And I'm like, oh boy, I don't think that's a good thing.
Yeah, yeah, and he says it with such absolute conviction.
Yeah.
He's just like, "I have come to know the love of the paw race," and even Demar says, "You almost sound like you believe it," and he's
Yeah.
like, like he gives
Mhm.
him that look. I do, and it's like, yeah, He's serious this time, folks. Like, you might want to leave him alone.
Right.
So, yeah, he
All
does
right.
such a great job.
He is a great
Market right,
villain.
he
Yeah.
is. He looks the part no matter what he's wearing. Even when then they stripped the makeup off of him and they gave him the wrinkled nose, he still was like, "Nah, man, you're still evil. Like
Yeah.
even without all that, you're still evil."
So on that point, I was fine in my experience that people say that I don't know the people who play villains, like the actors, are actually really nice people. A lot of times, like you hear behind the scenes stories, and it turns out that those people are actually very lovely people. They're very friendly and down to earth and like they play these evil characters so well, but like the actual person is just like the nicest guy. Do you know if Marco Limo is like how people describe him offset?
So unfortunately, I'm gonna have to say no. And it's not and not to say that he therefore is mean or rude or nasty or anything like that. But he's very intense is kind of the vibe that's put down about him, is that he's a very intense individual.
Sure.
And in the Star Trek documentary, What We Leave Behind, there is a bit in there about um, when they were introducing the character of Dukat, and they wanted him to have a certain intensity for sure. But in particular, they wanted him to have this intensity with Kira. And it was very important that they have this particular intensity. And so he worked on it and worked on it and worked on it. And even he admits that there came a time when Mark, was like obsessed with her. And he was like, it was just something that just kind of like came up. And he's like, I just really wanted her. So much to the point that it kind of poured over into his role, to which Nana then talks about, and she says how he used to creep her out, and it just was something that they used a lot, but it was just him being him. It wasn't like he was intentionally trying to, offend anyone or anything like that. He was just a naturally very intensive kind of guy, but that's what they needed, because they wanted somebody who could be a foil for both Kira and Cisco. And both Kira and Cisco bring a different kind of energy to their scenes. I think we can all agree to that. And needing to have someone who could match that intensity, but also be versatile enough to play with those two particular characters, probably very hard. And I would, again, I got to pat him on the back for being able to do it, because he does it, and he does it well. I would say that I feel like Mark Alamo really does rise to the challenge and makes it work.
Mhm, mhm.
So
Yeah, he's definitely great in this part. Um, and yeah, whether or not he is nice, I mean, I assume he's nice off screen. I love the idea that he like, he's a method actor almost. Like he became obsessed with Kira because he was supposed to be obsessed with Kira. That's the part he's playing.
right,
That's kind of funny. Um, but Perry, I have a confession to make. I did it again. I accidentally read something slightly ahead of time before I was supposed to. I accidentally read the first, just the snippet, the first line of the snippet of the next episode said, "As Cisco regrets his uh, broken engagement." I was like, "What? Broken engagement? There's no broken engagement. We talked about." And this episode's,
David, David,
I know,
David.
I know.
I
And
tell you
so
all the time.
I know. I didn't mean to read it. I was just trying to make sure I knew which episode I was supposed to be watching.
Uh huh.
And I was so mad at myself. I was like, I can't believe it. Because as soon as he proposed, I was like, is this what's gonna happen? She's gonna say no or something. So like when she says yes, but she's like he says, is that a yes? And she's like, what do you think? I was like, is this gonna be one of those where she doesn't really mean it, and then like she's gonna have cold feet by the end of the episode? So I wasn't surprised for the reason why the breakup or why this engagement is going to be broken, but I was anticipating something the whole time, which I'm sad to say is because I knew, because I had read a spoiler. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
I just don't know what I'm gonna do with you, man. I try and I try and I try, and you just ruin things. So
Yeah, for myself. But oh wow, you found
So
it. There we
I was
go.
trying to find this earlier, but it was taking a bit too long. This I just wanted to say before we really move further beyond Ducat. This is the image. This is from the episode that we were talking about earlier. Again, all he needs is like a smoke machine behind him, and this
Uh-huh.
would be the quintessential image that we ever had of that kind of turn of the century Satan
Yeah.
villain look,
Yeah. For those in our
and
listening audience, we are looking at a picture Perry pulled up of,
Mark Alimo as the card shark
yeah.
who's trying to hustle Data when Data goes back in time in the Next Generation episode, and he's
Yep.
trapped in
Isn't
1800s,
is that the
1800s,
episode where
1900s
his
San Francisco.
Is that the episode where his head is literally lost to time?
Yeah, yeah. Data's head pops off, and they find it in a cave. And I can't believe I can't think of the name of the episode. But that's what it is. His head pops off. Data's head. Hang on, I can find it.
Now, while you're looking that up, that must have
Time's
been one.
Arrow. There it is.
What season is that?
That part I don't know.
Because if it's a season, I think it's one of the later seasons when he would have been kind of
It's like
established.
season 5 or 6. I'm gonna say season 5 because I remember like everything about these episodes was pretty crisp. Like they got the
Right?
uniforms the way that they were gonna stay for the run of the show, all that kind of stuff. So I'm thinking that this is like a season 5
So
cliffhanger.
that's before he was Gold Dukat established as a Lord of.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
okay. I was
So
gonna
this is
say,
a season 5 going into season 6
and it
episode.
was season 6, season 1 that the two shows overlapping.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, anyway, going back to the engagement again, I've never been fully involved or fully believed the Cassidy Yates romance. I don't feel like
And we've discussed this before, and I truly believe that the reason that you don't is because we just don't see it a lot. And
yes,
so we sub because so what we end up seeing is basically the leaps in the
snippets. Yeah,
relationship, right? So every time we see them, they're all the more they're so much closer, they're so much more in tune with each other, they're so much more lived in with each other, but
right.
we never get to really see that development. It's just like boom, one minute they have a date, then the next minute, she's practically living with them, and then the next, it's this stuff. So yeah, I get that.
Yeah, and I guess what's interesting about Avery Brooks he's a great actor, but I feel like the way I don't think it's his fault. I think the direction they gave him is that he's kind of this. He has the low voice, the like he's presenting this beautiful image to Cassidy of this land he's bought,
Hmm.
and like her character is like not getting it. That she's like, oh, like she's like joking about it with him, like, oh, I can see you needing to get your teeth, and
Yeah, she does very much talk about it in a way that removes her from it.
right,
And so she's talking about it, and she's like, and she's not dismissive, and she's not like putting it down in any way. And she's just like, he's making plans. Like, here's the house he's thinking about moving. She tells him, oh, that looks beautiful, and he's like, I can't decide if I want to have this wall in here or not. And she's like, well, no, you should open it up, let people see what you're doing and everything else. And
right.
he counters with his reason for not. He talks about the window, and the window will face out into the valley, and you'll be able to see the river flow and everything else. And she's just listening. And then he
Yeah.
talks about making his own, spring wine, and she's making jokes about it being a rare emissary varietal,
Hmm.
um, and she's like, yeah, your home will be lovely. Like, there's no doubt in my mind your home will be lovely and you're enjoying this. And he's
Right.
like, and then he just stops. He's just like, I want this to be our home. This is
Right.
not just me. This is us. I'm
Right.
planning, but I'm planning for us, not just me.
Right.
And that's where their conversation begins to shift.
Right.
So,
Yeah. By the way, you want to change the screen for us?
oh, I'm sorry. Do
Yeah.
you not? Do you not want to
You're very
stare
tiny
at?
now. You're very, very tiny. I'm just finding my screen. Um, but yeah, I guess that's really also what I'm getting at though is I don't feel like the show has not done enough to really get me invested in the idea that these two have really merged their lives in any function in any really powerful way. I mean, let's put it this way: when Esri goes into Worf's room and sees all of the things in there, she hears voices of Jadzia and Worf talking about their lives together, and we can see the picture he still has of her on his nightstand and such. So that relationship, they did more to make us believe it than they did with. And again, yet Cassidy has never been a main character like Worf and Jadzia, so there is an advantage there. I will say,
Hmm.
um,
Hmm.
but I wish that conversation of I bought this land was like, hey, remember I talked about buying that land? I did it. Or hey, remember we talked about we wanted to get married, but we wanted a place to go. Well, I found a great spot, and I may have preemptively done it, but I went ahead and bought the land. Ta-da! Like it wasn't a conversation of two people who are in sync with each other working out kinks. It was a conversation of, you want to join me on my grand adventure? I'm like, okay, great, but kind of a
Yeah.
more of a shock conversation than a
Well, and I've always felt like I think they did this because they were trying to show a different kind of aspect of a relationship with these two. So like with the O'Briens, we got a very lived in couple, and we saw them fighting with each other when it comes to parenting roles and jobs and purpose driven life, and being a supportive couple of each other. We saw all of that with them, and moving from the Enterprise to here, and so forth. We see Jadzia and Worf as they're, struggling to understand the nature of their relationship to finally getting together and getting married, and so forth. What I think that they were trying to do here, and this is one of those, kind of comes up for debate. Cisco's a widower who's been raising his kid alone, and now he's at a point where he's kind of taking this particular aspect of his life back. And even with him dating Cassidy for as long as he's been dating her, again, it's been, at least especially from our perspective, it's been, a very long distance relationship. She's a freighter captain. She goes off to do her missions, her runs, whatever, and then she comes back whenever she can come back, and they continue from there. I think what they were trying to show with these two is a different kind of mature relationship where it's not necessary for them to have to be around each other all the time, and so when they are together, it's like they're s- they're just so in sync. And I think that's what we're supposed to be picking up on. These are two people who are consummate professionals who are very much in sync with each other, who don't need all of those highs and low moments to be a great couple. And I think you point out how they kind of failed on that.
Mhm. Right.
And they could have done more to make us invested in their relationship than what they did. And I think they, as a person who's seen what's coming next, I think they do a better job of of tying them together for us. But it's also one of those things like, I mean, that was nice, but I really wish they had um, done that more throughout the
Right.
show. Like I feel we have a better connection and understanding of Jake, or not Jake, but of Ben with Jennifer than we do Cassidy, and Jennifer's dead.
Yeah.
And that's weird that you could even make that argument, but you can. So,
Yeah. Well, maybe that's a simpler relationship in some ways, mother son. It's just so, it is what it is in some ways, as opposed to has to have a definitive nature to it. I don't know. I guess another thing too is that just as I'm thinking about it, I kind of wish that Cisco had fallen in love with the Bajoran woman. Like I feel like the Bajoran characters have other than obviously Kira, there haven't been we have an occasional Bajoran, Kai Wynn and the other others every now and then. But I feel like that might have been a smarter move, is to make it so that Cisco is this emissary, and like part of that is like he loves the planet. He likes the idea of retiring here, but make it a little more personal. I feel like make it
I I like that they didn't do that,
sure. I
because
mean,
I feel
you
like it
don't
was,
have to.
well, no, and I feel like it's a little bit on the nose. It's one of those things where I feel like every time that we saw unattached Bajoran women in particular, they made them out to be these very alluring individuals. And I like that Cisco didn't come here and kind of, I guess, go native, you know?
Well,
Uh,
I feel like that is the argument, though, is he is kind of gone native.
well, I think that the argument is like over time he comes to it naturally. He's not
Well, yeah.
influenced by somebody else,
He's not
you
drawn
know.
into it by a personal relationship.
Yeah.
He falls in love with the culture and the planet if not
Right.
a individual. Okay,
Right.
yeah, yeah,
Because he resists his role and influence as emissary for the longest time, but then he finally, like again, he warms himself up to it. He works through the levels of it, and then you feel like he comes to it honestly. So now at this stage in season 7, where he's like buying a house and or buying property to build a house, everything else, again, that feels earned and makes sense versus it being something where in season 3, he's been dating this hot former Dabo girl turned teacher, Bajoran, who refuses to go anywhere else, refuses to, go to Earth, or it's like, oh, Earth's fine, but Bajor's my home. And so he's already got like one foot locked in on Bajor being home because his girlfriend slash fiance slash wife won't go anywhere else, won't live anywhere else.
fair
So
enough, fair enough. And as Vincent did point out, the reason that Cisco fell in love with her in the first place is because she was a baseball fan. Cassidy, that is.
Well, that
Um,
that certainly helped him want to have a conversation with her, was the fact that
right,
she knew about baseball.
right.
Whether or not she's a legitimate fan, that's debatable. But,
Was it? Wasn't she a part of the baseball team they got together at the beginning of the
w
season?
he makes her a part of the baseball team when it comes to playing against
The
the
Vulcans.
Vulcans, but, her only real experience with baseball was her brother. Her brother played,
True.
baseball, and I mean, it's kind of, I guess it's intimated that she did at least a couple of practices or something with her brother, but she isn't by no way like necessarily a diehard baseball fan.
Mm,
So,
okay.
you know, but yeah, I mean, I've always felt like this relationship was solid, but could they have given us more? Absolutely. I would have loved to see instances, for example, of maybe Cisco goes on a mission, right? And when he comes back, he's greeted by Jake and Cassidy at home and they talk.
Mhm.
And it's
Right.
like, oh, they've been hanging out this past week. You were like the siege at AR-558, right? And Cisco has been locked away on this asteroid for the last week and a half. He comes back, he's exhausted, he's tired, he's dirty, he's all these things. And he walks into his home and there's Jake and Cassidy. They've been hanging out. Like she came when she found out that Cisco was gone and presumed missing or couldn't get back or whatever the situation was. So she came back to be with Jake. And they've just been hanging out ever since. Because
Right.
let's not forget, Jake is the one who introduced him. And Jake said that he and Cassidy were friends before he introduced her to his father. So
Right.
I think things like that would make sense. We don't really get to see that. I just think like seeing things like that where it shows a natural progression of bonding of them all together would have also enhanced their relationship. And we
Yeah.
don't get to see it.
Do you think? And I'm trying to. I mean, just trying to remember all the episodes. Has there really been an episode where like the three of them? I mean, not maybe not the three of them even, but just the two of them, Cassidy and Cisco, really got a chance to be together. I mean, I know we've had Cassidy appear, but I can't say I feel like there was an episode that really focused on them directly. They might have been a part of a
No,
larger story,
yeah,
but
they were a part of larger stories, but there was never an episode that was just about them, which also could have really worked. Like if they had done something to where maybe she had to take him on a trip on her ship for some reason,
right.
and now they're having to spend time together in that dynamic, or but no, there's never a full on episode that's about just them being a couple together or anything like
Right.
that. So
Yeah, I feel like this is a missed opportunity then. But anyway, all that to say that yeah, it's funny that he thought he could the two of them thought they could get away with a small wedding. I mean, he is the emissary.
right.
Okay, but now we have to go on to Esri and Worf.
I was gonna say we have to kind of turn to the
Yeah.
Klingon in the room.
Yeah. I don't know, man. So as we've said earlier, so much of this was silly. The space sickness and the oh I can't hear you, I'm in a tunnel. Like you're supposed to like also like jilt your voice. Like I can't hear, I'm in oh like you're supposed to like mess up your voice and make it, the noises. She didn't try hard at all. But uh yeah.
I just there's so many things I don't like about this episode. When it comes to that particular storyline, and I've tried to give the character of Dax a lot of cut him a lot of slack. Ezri does get more of my ire than any of the others. I'm at peace with that. But this episode kind of highlights a lot of that. Like, we are so totally and as far as possible removed from Jadzia, and yet Jadzia is invoked multiple times in this storyline. It's like
Yeah.
it's awful.
The
She
fact that they
gets
use her
space.
voice is the peak
Yeah.
of all
And
time.
right,
Yeah.
and I mean, it was like such a jarring, uh, you know, and just the way it invoked that nostalgia for her,
Hmm.
hearing her voice and the storyline and the relationship with Worf and all of that, and then seeing it so easily just um, bastardized for the sake of Esri, just
Yeah.
really, really bothers me.
Yeah. A part of that too is Esri, as played by
Nicole DeBoer,
again.
Nicole DeBoer, that's
There's
her name.
no, no. I'm just saying, like Nicole DeBoer is lovely. I have nothing against her. She is so small, and Worf is supposed to be this big, powerful dude. Like when she
Worf is
grabs
a
his
giant,
head
right?
during the kiss, like I'm taking charge now. I'm kissing you. This little itty bitty girl who's been all weak and mild, and I can't do anything, suddenly being like I don't know, possessed by the spirit of Jadzia to come
Well, it's
make out
that,
with
and
him.
also we're supposed to believe that Worf wanted it too, right?
Yes.
That's what it was. Because yeah, if this was her truly trying to take control of him and make him do, there's no way that she would have been able to. Um, Worf was also quite adept at controlling his strength. He would have to be because he would have killed somebody a long
Oh
time ago.
gosh. Oh yeah. Well,
Um,
we know he did at one point.
yeah,
That
when he
poor
was a
kid.
child. When he was a child, he
Yeah.
killed someone. So could
Apparently,
you
soccer
imagine
is a
him
game of
now?
life and death with war.
Yeah.
But
So
yes, but I mean, Esri is not as you said. Like if he desired her, it would be so different than him desiring Jadzia because Jadzia was supposed to be. She was presented as his equal. The idea was is that
yes,
she could handle Worf, and to the
that
point where
she
like
chose Worf
yeah, like
too.
she chose him
She
more than even
chose
he
Worf.
chose her in some ways,
Yeah.
or at the very least, she was the first to pick him. She picked him before he picked her. Um, and the fact that Esri, I don't know, is Esri in love with Worf or is it just the memories? Like I've
So
always thought it was
and
like,
that's the thing that they kind of, supposedly toying around with in this episode, that she's so conflicted and confused that that on the one hand she does have overall romantic feelings, but are those feelings actually aimed at Worf or someone else? We don't know yet. We're not supposed to know. Then it's also she's got Jadzia's memories and life and everything else, so she's heavily influenced there. Not to mention, she also feels this weird kind of guilt and obligation towards Worf. So all of these things combine in her to make her do some severely questionable acts, like
yeah,
stealing the runabout to go and look for him, and then trying to take care of him and kissing him and sleeping with him and so forth and so on. But yeah, there's just I don't know. So much of this is a problem.
yeah. Well, it's interesting too because when they wake up on the Breen ship or whatever, and like he starts rubbing her shoulder, like, wow, we've already got there, rubbing shoulders. And he's like, oh, it must have been when the Breen attacked us. And she's like, no, it's from our night of passion. And like, he's like, oh, I'm sorry. And she's like, what are you sorry about? It's like her character has flipped. Like maybe that's the idea is that as a Dax, her memories and her personalities kind of meld. Okay, fine, but it does mean that we've had so many episodes where it was Jadzia as the main character, where she has to work through that, and so for Esri to come along and either like repudiate some of that or
Well,
fail, like
so here's the part of that too that they and I think we saw this in an episode and we've just forgotten about it. So we need to go back.
okay,
First and foremost, let's not forget that Jadzia was a Trill initiate. She went through
Yes.
years of
Yep.
training to be joined
Right.
and successfully passed.
Right.
Esri went through none of that. She had none of the training. She had none of the adaptation.
He was just a
Nothing.
convenient host because they needed
Right.
someone. Yep. Yep. Yep.
So now, with that being said, I believe, and I'm trying to remember the episode, but it was uncovered that far more people can be joined than
Just let
was
on.
originally alleged. And so the whole establishment of an initiate, program and a council to oversee, joinings and all the other kind of stuff, that was all just window dressing that they did. The reality is there are far more Trill than there are symbionts. So in order to stop people from fighting over them and trading them like little commodities and not valuing them, they established this whole thing to give this air of ceremony and importance so that people wouldn't do that.
Well, I also remembered though that the idea was that if you were joined, you couldn't unjoin because then you
No,
would
that's
die.
that's still true. You
Right.
can't. But I'm just saying, like, there's more Trill than there are symbionts. So
Right.
imagine if everyone that can have one gets one, and then you're odd man out, and you really want one. What's to stop you from killing somebody and taking theirs?
Right. As
Because
John Cena herself experienced.
right,
Yeah.
right,
That one
you
episode. It
know.
was season like 3-ish. I feel
I
like
mean, they
early
they
season
seem
3.
yeah,
Yeah.
season 1 or 2 actually, I think where the guy comes on board the station with the skeleton crew,
Yeah. It must have been
and
season 2. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, it was
Yeah.
pretty early on in the show.
It was like right
Um,
after that 3-part the circle plot line. I
mhm,
think it was like the literally the next episode was that one. So
yeah, so
anyway,
then that's season 2.
yeah.
Yeah, so that's basically what it is. It's like you would stop valuing the symbiont, you would stop valuing the experience of it and everything else, and it would just become a thing to have.
Right.
Like a cool just little status symbol or whatever. So that's why they established that, you got to go through this long and arduous process, and we're checking your mental status and giving you training to handle the memories and all the other kind of stuff. And Esri doesn't get any of that. So her being overwhelmed by Jadzia's thoughts, Jadzia's feelings makes sense because she never learned to process them, but at the same time, it's like she doesn't try. And it
Right.
makes it all the more damning because she's a
I
psychiatrist.
was gonna say it.
Of all things, she's a
I know.
psychiatrist. And it's just like, really?
They, as
Like,
Vincent said in the chat, she was the conceived mistake. I mean,
she was.
every bit of her character, just like, why? Why did you choose this? As you're as the character as you describe as you made her.
I really wish, like, I wish they would go back and do, like, maybe some movies or some other shows or whatever where they reintroduce these characters and let them be fully fleshed out, because it's a shame, because I think Esri would work if she was with other characters,
Sure.
or on a different show.
Yeah.
But the way she's presented and used in Deep Space Nine, it just does the character a disservice, which also does Nicole disservice, because
Yeah.
she's being thrust into a world that she's got very little time to acclimate to and to make us warm up to her. Like, we're already
Right.
talking about the last 10 episodes of the show here, and I mean, that's just not fair.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yep.
I mean, there's
Not
really
much
just
to
nothing else
say.
to say. Yeah,
Yeah.
nothing else really to say about it. That's just the truth of how it's done here.
Yeah.
And this episode just even further highlights, like, she could have been anything else, and this would have made a little bit more sense. But the fact that she's also supposed to be a trained therapist, which even then, she didn't even finish all of her training. Like Cisco, she was supposed to go and finish that. She had like 6 more months or whatever to finish her training. Cisco's like, what could you learn in 6 months that you can't do right here on the station?
Right.
You're hired. It's like, well, apparently a lot, because she knows nothing.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
she lets Garrett guide. Garrett speak to her any kind of way in one episode. She lets Nog guide his own therapy in another one. She keeps traumatizing Worf every time she turns around. And she even accuses him in this one. Um, you've been avoiding me for 6 months, and he's like, yeah, because
I,
you're my dead wife.
yeah.
Like,
I
you
thought
should
that
go
that
away.
was the right choice for the Trill. Like the Trill suggested that even it
Right.
wasn't. Yeah.
Right. She's like, well, I was ready to go away. Well, you still should have. Even if he said, no, stay, you should have been like, no, the smart thing, the mature thing to do, at least for a while, is to go.
Right.
I'll go away. You still had 6 months of training to do anyway. Take your ass, go do the training, and then come back.
Right.
Give everyone time to fully grieve and separate from Jadzia before you pop back up and you're like, oh, I'm also Dax. Because that's really what it was. Like, there was no time for him or anyone really to grieve. Suddenly she was just there.
Yeah. Yep.
And that's just what?
Yeah.
That's like, that's like, let's say your wife has a twin and you knew she had a twin, but you never saw said twin. And then 3 days after your wife dies, the twin shows up. What are you supposed to do with that?
Yeah.
You're supposed to be okay? That's crazy to me. That's absolutely crazy to me. So, I mean, I'm not really sure what they were thinking when they did that.
Right.
And just one of those classic, Worf, get over it.
Yeah.
That's pretty much what it was. Worf, get
Yeah.
over it.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like there's an interesting question there about. I mean, if they want to do it, let me put it this way: they've chosen now for Worf and Esri to have had a night together. So they seem to be going down the plot line of what do we do if we try and rekindle this relationship? That could be a very interesting plot line. So I'm actually kind of curious to see how they take it. But we're certainly starting off on a rough terrain. And again, that can make for interesting drama.
Hmm.
So maybe that's an interesting way to get story plot going. Um, but yeah, it feels like a mistake. It feels
Yeah,
like this is not going to end well.
and it's not going to
Everyone,
end well once again for Worf. Like,
yes,
that's how it feels. Like, once again, we're going to end up finding our Klingon is just kind of out here being told, "Get over it." And
right.
I'm tired of that
Or that
narrative
it's
for
his
him.
fault that she fell for him. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the
Hey,
other part of it too. Like, it's also his fault. It's
yeah,
like, wait a second, can she not control herself at all?
right. Well, and let me put it. I'm gonna put a fine point on this, and people might call me a misogynist, but like Esri comes off as kind of I don't know if typically womanish is the right phrase, but in the sense
I'm
that
gonna say it's not, but go ahead.
I know, but when she is there arguing with Worf about like you're just all mean to me, but she's the one driving this conversation. Worf has done everything to say I don't want this conversation. I don't want to talk. Like he went out and killed a boar because he's a Klingon and because he's bored of the K rat of the rations they're eating. He wants something different, and she's giving him a hard time. She's being
Yeah,
all, and it's
yeah,
like,
and I did not like that either because it's once again it's kind of establishing that she she kind of craps on his culture
yeah,
because and for someone who has all the memories of not just Jadzia but also the legendary Curzon who was a great friend to the Klingon people, for her to question the fact that this Klingon in his prime didn't want to eat your crappy Starfleet vegan rations and
right.
instead dove into the jungle and hunted him down some meat.
Right.
And
I
you're
mean, I
how
figure
all she needed to say in that moment was, how barbaric," and this would have sealed it for me,
right.
you know?
Well, that's how it comes off as, and the idea that all of that preamble of her complaining and being meh to him is actually her fighting off her romantic feelings. It just comes off as a bit like cliche. Is what I'm getting at. That's why I'm
Well,
saying womanly.
and
Like
yeah, well,
I'm not saying women
that's
do that. I'm saying that's a tropish way of
I
doing
was gonna
things.
say that's a '90s trope of these two characters that seem to be on opposite ends, yelling and arguing, but they're slowly but surely getting closer and closer together until finally the heat of the moment overwhelms them both, and
Right.
they find themselves locked in a passionate embrace. You know what? that's never happened to me in the entirety of my life. I've never argued with a woman and at the end of the argument been like, "I must have you."
Right.
It's more like, "I must have you 1,000 yards away from me, like, as soon as possible.
Yes.
Please, please leave. Like,
Yeah.
you're
The idea
disrespectful,
of
you're rude."
the angry, coming together, if you will, and especially, I guess this is the part two. The idea that Worf would be attracted to Esri simply because she has Dax memories doesn't quite work. It makes
Yeah.
sense that she's attracted to him. It does not make sense that he's attracted to her because there's nothing about Esri that reminds us of Jadzia. That's the whole
Enough
point.
of the woman, at least enough of the woman that he fell in love with.
Right.
You're absolutely right.
The
She's
reason he kind
yeah,
of like doesn't want to be around her or is like resents her is because she knows all of the things about him, but he doesn't know a thing about Esri. That's
right.
what's so
And she
it's
exactly, and that's what he doesn't wanna talk about because she tries to bring it up, and
right.
he's like, "No, like, we're not having this discussion. Those are things that Jadzia and I shared.
Shared. You
You are
weren't a
not
part of
Jadzia.
that.
You were not
Yeah.
a part of that. You're not going to get to be a part of my innermost thoughts and persona just because
Right.
of your cultural whatever."
Right. Like I wish she just was like had a mature moment of like she just like said like just sat him down and like there was just this mature moment of like, hey, I have all these memories from her and like her personality still lives within me. And I just, as the now host of all of that, can express to you how much she loves you and how much you meant to her. Like there could be a great cathartic moment of like, yes, she's
Yeah.
dead, and I have those memories, and now that means something for my life and for yours. But to return it to base, I'm gonna put it base, yeah, base sexual urge is yeah, mm,
Because there I feel like at this point we're dealing with people who, for all of their expansion of Klingons, you know, don't really know Klingons, or at least don't really know the character of Worf. And so it was
right.
just like it was easier to do something that way than it was to, make them, I don't know, come to a different kind of resolution.
Well, I like what Vincent said here. He points out, and this actually was true to the scenario, and I remember thinking about it in the moment. They're stranded on a planet with no real way. I mean, she's trying to work out how to get a signal boost, right? And we know that according to typical Star Trek fashion, someone will figure it out. But maybe they won't, and maybe they're going to have to populate this planet just amongst the two of them. So if the conversation had gone in that direction of like, you're not Jadzia. I'm not gonna treat you the way. But and then Esri throw out, well, you know what? Maybe you're gonna have to get used to it because we're the only two people on this planet, and we don't got a transponder. Maybe that conversation could have worked itself out into more reasonable
I mean,
explanation for why things went the way they did. But
eventually
yeah,
perhaps, but not
yeah,
within the
not
first
within.
night
Yeah,
of them being together, or well, because they even say that it's been a few days.
right,
So they've been on that planet in that general area. I think it's for like 4 or 5 days, because Worf says, "I've been eating those rations for 4 days and I'm tired of it, so I
right.
went and got me something
Which is
else."
totally believable.
Well,
Totally
and which also is another reason why her criticizing him for going and hunting something down makes no sense to me, because it's
right.
like,
I too would be
of
like, oh great, let's try
right,
something different. Yeah,
and eventually your rations are gonna run out. Why wouldn't you already be looking for ways to extend your rations when you don't know how long you're gonna be on the planet? You need to know if the stuff around you is edible, or I
yeah.
don't know, might kill you in your sleep. So I mean, she should be thanking him.
She
You
should.
have a
Oh yeah.
built-in natural predator as your senior officer.
Right.
He's not gonna let you die. Like, come on.
And you know it's funny? I haven't watched any of those shows like Naked and Afraid, but I'm sure you've heard of shows like that, right?
Oh
Where
man,
they
yes.
send people out into the wilderness, they have to survive. My parents have apparently gotten into one of those shows. They found one of them that they've enjoyed and watched, and I watched like an episode with them. But they talk about how much energy you expend just trying to catch food to eat it is actually what does a lot of those people in. Like they expend so much energy building a boat, building a trap, or walking to their traps and finding there's nothing there. that it turns out like one guy won not by catching food, but by actually starving himself. He learned how to like live on so little that he's once he got to a certain point, he was basically just starving himself, but he wasn't like hitting the button to like say I'm done or anything. He was able to put up with it for long enough to win. But anyway, point being is like if you have Worf who within one night got a spear, killed a boar-looking animal, was butchering it and cooking it because he's already got a fire going. Like you should be praising him to the skies.
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, and I think that's one of those things that people, they don't do a very good job of, showing just how hard it is to do some of those survival things. Like you think you could just wash up on an island or something somewhere and within a couple of short hours start a fire, have a little shelter and food. I've watched a few of those shows. I've watched some of those survival shows and yeah, I mean they do impress upon you just how hard it is to do some of that, especially if you don't have any kind of prepared, substance or medium at least to get you started.
Hmm.
I couldn't imagine doing that. Now, granted, they had their little go packs or whatever, but still, he was able to once they had a secure site, he made himself a spear and killed something and brought
Yeah,
it back, and he wasn't injured. He
yeah,
wasn't dirty. He wasn't, bleeding. He wasn't partially gored or whatever. He killed it and came back.
yeah.
Like, yeah, praise that man. So lots of issues that we have here with
Yeah.
this one, but I will say things get better. The story builds, the story gets better. So this is where we get truly into the serialization of Deep Space Nine. Something they toyed around with a lot. They gave us little snippets here and there, but this is something that also, CBS, Paramount, all of them kind of fought against. They didn't want the shows to kind of run one into another, and fortunately for us, unfortunately for them, that was really kind of the only way to tell this
This
story
story.
that they'd been
Well,
building
so quick
towards.
question for you then. You say you don't like this episode. Makes sense. This episode's a setup. But when you consider it against other shows like Battlestar Galactica, which have some sort of setup episodes every now and then,
Mhm.
does this episode is it a successful episode for what it's trying to do?
Oh,
Do you
okay.
think?
So yes, I would say that it is, and considering that a lot of the writers who worked on shows like Battlestar later, um, cut their
Started here.
teeth here,
Yeah.
it makes perfect sense to me. And it's like you can almost kind of see their thought process here. And as we watch the next few episodes, seeing how everything does, build in and interrelate and all that kind of stuff, and just how successful it is at telling a story. Um, I think it's evident why that became a popular method of storytelling that we see in shows later on, like Battlestar, The Expanse, so forth and so on. So um, I'm surprised we don't see more shows doing that, and not just in the sci-fi genre, but just in a lot of other, like I think a cop show where that was the method of telling their story would be hugely popular. You know, we just don't have anything that's like that.
Mm,
And so, yeah, I'm all for serialization. I mean, now the main argument was, again, back then they didn't have a way of guaranteeing that the shows followed in their precise order they needed to follow, even with syndication. Some networks might air the first two episodes and then you might not see the next two or three for another, 3 weeks or whatever it was, because they had the ability to adjust all of that. So that throws them off. But now, with the way that we access television and streaming and so forth, every show should really do some kind of serialization.
yeah.
Vincent asks, "Would you like this episode if they simply deleted the Worf Ezri storyline?" Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it would free them up to give us more maybe of the Dominion aspect of this story, because everything that we see on the Federation side is very kind of like humdrum. They're just kind of living their lives, except for again Worf and Esri. Cisco's over here planning a wedding and everything else. So we know our enemy is menacing, but we don't really know what they're doing. If maybe we got a bit more of the extent of the virus that's affecting the founders, or what exactly is Ducat's plan, a little bit more of his plan than
Right.
just first stage being turn in Bajoran. Giving us a little bit more of that would have definitely helped this episode.
Right. Before we move on, I just what was that? Where did the episode fall in the storyline when uh, Jadzia and Worf are on that mission and she gets hurt and
Mhm.
he decides to not finish the mission in order to save her, which is against regulation. That was before they were married,
That
right?
was before. No, I think it was after they were married.
Because
I
I
think
that's
it's
my
like immediately following their marriage, they get sent on a mission. And
reason I bring it up is just
no,
because
I'm sorry, you're correct. It was before they were married, but they were engaged. And Worf was supposed to be working on his vows. That's why I remember that it's uh, before the wedding.
okay,
And so Cisco sends them to go and pick up the Cardassian spy who's going to escape from the Dominion compound and come and, reveal massive amounts of intel.
right,
And Jadzia she gets grazed by a
uh huh,
shot from a Dominion weapon, which has an anticoagulant effect in it, which she's able to keep going for a while, but ultimately she ends up losing so much blood that he's got to leave her behind.
right,
Worf goes off, tries to finish the mission, makes it to the rendezvous point, but the guy isn't there, and
right,
Worf decides not to wait on him. So he throws his mek'leth, which sticks in a tree, kind of like just saying, "Hey, we were here, you weren't."
right.
He treks back, gets Jadzia, brings her home. She gets saved, and Cisco chews him out and is like, "Yeah, we'll make sure you guys are never put on a mission together." And
Change of heart. I found it.
yeah,
That's season 6. Okay. Yeah,
so
yeah,
they
yeah.
are married already by the time that mission occurred. Okay.
Yes, that
But yeah,
was.
that was the gist of the mission. Oh, she wanted him to just write her a poem. That's what it was. It wasn't okay. But anyway, that was what that
Yeah,
mission was about.
and they'd been married for a little bit by that point. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. I was just thinking that episode is because we're once again stranded, and
It almost looks like the same place.
yeah, and it just it's just so sad that Terry Farrell was like, hey, let me give it a good chance to back off my character a bit. And they just dumped her. They just said nope. I mean,
And
I literally thought that they were gonna credit her for her lines when they were doing those flashbacks, and
no,
I don't remember them doing so
I'm
at
gonna tell you.
all.
I'm gonna tell you right now. They did her dirty on this episode and on the series finale. They do her dirty, and we'll get there. Of course, I'm trying not to spoil it for you because we're going to end up talking about it, of course. But it's very clear that her exit was the sour note, and the execs, the powers that be, did not like what happened. And it wasn't like they didn't like it in her favor. They were all like, oh, she's being selfish, she is being such a diva or whatever. And she absolutely wasn't. What she was asking for was perfectly reasonable, and considering how they end up doing this last half of the show,
Hmm.
makes total sense. There's no reason whatsoever they couldn't have given her what they asked. They just
Right.
didn't want to. It was a power play, and it ended poorly for them. And now, over time, as people become more and more aware of the show and what happened and everything else, all those people, everybody's looking back at them like, y'all were just sexist. That's just
But
all there is to it.
this episode, the reason I'm bringing all that up is because this episode, like Vincent asked, would this episode have been better if we deleted this storyline? No, it would have been better and made so much more sense if Terry Farrell as Jadzia Dax was playing this character. Even if she had gone
Yeah,
AWOL, which would have been totally off character, as we've already said, it was done poorly in that sense anyway. Whatever. Let's say that she also takes a runabout
Yeah,
and
like
runs off.
that's what the episode would be for what because Worf was stationed on the Rotaran with Martok. Jadzia is a Federation officer. She doesn't have the same status that Worf does, so of course she stays on the Federation base. Worf is reported as missing from the Rotaran. She wants to go and look for him, but someone's got to stay behind. She's next in chain of command as a Federation officer after Worf.
Right.
So if Cisco takes the Defiant and goes off to look for Worf, it makes sense that she would stay behind to help Kira. But when Cisco returns and it's like, we had to come back, the Cardassians and the Dominion were pushing through the area, we couldn't stay, the Defiant's too big a target, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Her taking off and using her science expertise
Right.
to secret out a runabout
Even the
and
whole nonsense about turning off the engines would have at least made more sense with her
would
character saying
right,
it.
absolutely would have made more sense. Or hey, she knows that Cisco's going to try to track her down, so she's jerry-rigged the shuttle so that it's not giving off a signal for him to track.
Right.
Or if he's calling her and she's instead of her going she legit does
Has a
something to
button.
make it right. Like all of those things would have worked for
Yeah.
them. Ah. Anyway,
We can complain about that till we're blue in the face, but we've already done it when we're
yes.
blue in the face. So,
Yes.
oh,
So, well, I think that we have really kind of nailed this episode down for its problems. Can't think of anything else, any finer points we could really put on it. Anything else you wish to say about this episode before we close it out?
yeah, just that it looks. I'm looking forward to seeing how this is going to wrap up. The idea of a truly serialized 10-episode finale sounds amazing. We've had 7 seasons of these characters, Esri somewhat included. So we'll have a chance to really wrap up a lot of great storylines. I want Garrick to have his climactic moment. I want Kai Wynn to get her comeuppance in some big way. I want all the things. So I'm looking forward
Okay.
to it all.
Well, stay tuned because you're gonna get it.
Oh
You're
boy.
gonna get it. So, but I think that's going to do it for us tonight for this particular episode. Again, Star Trek Strange New Worlds, the new season premieres on July 13th. That is next Thursday. July 17th. I'm sorry. July 17th. That's next Thursday. So stay up for that if you want to. We may do something where we cover it a little bit because it is the only new Trek show that's out at this particular time. And we'll just kind of go from there. So, guys, until next week. Take care of yourselves.
Thanks, guys.